Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 139, coming at you from the Valley. I'm your host, Shane Gillette, for this weekly MMA podcast, streaming anywhere you listen to podcasts with the videos on YouTube. And we have a stacked show today. We don't just have UFC action, we have some PFL action, we have some RAF action and the NCAA Wrestling Championships, as well as recapping UFC London and previewing this stacked UFC Seattle card. So let's not waste any time. Let's jump right in. We have some fights that have been announced. We have the Michael Chiesa retirement fight, getting a short notice fill-in. Glad he gets to stay on the Seattle card. We get Carlson Harris out and Nico Price in against Michael Chiesa. We have Chris Padilla in for Nazim Sadikov against Markel Maderos April 11th. Solid replacement, still a good scrap. We have Brendan Allen taking on Edmund Shabazian June 6th. Edmund getting a big jump up. A little shocked about that booking, but I think it'll be a fantastic fight. We get Manel Kape taking on Kyoji Horiguchi June 20th. But this is going to be at the Apex. They fought, I believe, in Risen, I think it's Ryzen, in front of a massive Japanese crowd, sold out stadium. This is one hell of a showdown, flyweight title contender fight. I would assume the winner of Van Tatsuro fights Pantoja. The winner of that fights the winner of this, and it's at the Apex. I do like what the Apex has done with the renovations. Fans can afford tickets now, so on and so forth. But we can't have A-list fights like this at the Apex. They deserve to have sold-out arenas, especially these two who are at the back half of their prime. We have Nursultan Ruzaboev finally returning, taking on Andrei Pulyayev June 27th. A big fan of that fight. And I knew the matchmakers were going to make this fight. If you have any logical sense, you got to do it. Michel Pereira and Sharo Magomedov also on that June 27th. Absolute banger. You want to talk about unorthodox striking, just pure chaos. This has it written all over it. And then we have Bruno Ferreira. Quick turnaround, quick booking, taking on Ikram Aliskerov on June 27th as well. I'm really excited for that fight. But let's talk the whole world of MMA. We have Reese McKee since his release with the UFC, signing with the PFL. Another former UFCer switching promotions. Good for him. And then before we talk about PFL, we're going to talk about the MVP card that is fully announced. And I really don't get the excitement around this card. Will I tune in? Yes. Do I think it's going to deliver? Absolutely not. I think this will be maybe a 4, maybe a 5 overall out of a 10 compared to what the UFC is doing. I'm not going to go on my whole rant about the UFC product. I think I've covered that clearly enough. None of these MVP Netflix boxing events have turned out to be anything close to a competitive fights. But let's break it down. This is going on at the Intuit Dome. Props to MVP and Jake Paul for getting this card done. The first ever MMA card on Netflix. And at the Intuit Dome, brand new arena in Los Angeles where the Clippers play. We have, let's see. Chris Avila taking on Brandon Jenkins. Really don't care about that. Eileen Pereira taking on Jade Mawson Wong. Really don't care about that as well. A man who fought Tommy McMillan in the Dana White Contender Series, trains with Arman Sarukian. David Magoyan taking on Albert Morales. Solid little fight there. Namo Fazil taking on Jake Babian. Could care less. To be honest, this may be the best fight on the card. We have Muhammad Makayev taking on Adriano Moraes, who will be fighting at flyweight. Hopefully Adriano makes weight, but that'll be fantastic. Good for Muhammad getting back in the octagon. We have Junior Dos Santos taking on Robelis de Spain. I mean, shit, when was the last time we saw JDS do anything? He did bare knuckle against Alan Belcher in 2024, which he won. Did bare knuckle against Fabricio Verdum in 2023, won via decision. And then his last MMA fight was against Yorgan de Castro, where he lost due to shoulder injury. But his last UFC fight was 2020, so over 6 years ago, where he lost to Cyril Gahn via round 2 TKO. I'll be intrigued just to see JDS. I think he has a chance against Robelis just by wrestling him, and that's probably what's going to happen. We have Saladini Parnassi taking on Kenneth Cross, could care less. Former Bellator action, Lorenz Larkin taking on Jason Jackson, which honestly, this could be a pretty fun fight. Trying to see if they have fought before. Doesn't look like they have. Be ready for the grappling. We have Nate Diaz taking on Mike Perry. Nate Diaz has been on circuit saying he has been offered more money against the UFC, but he did not like the opponents. He said he didn't want the Conor McGregor fight. I love Nate Diaz. The McGregor fights were fantastic to watch. I've been on record many a time saying Nate Diaz wasn't even a top 10 UFC fighter in his own weight class. He has not looked great since, doing boxing. He just doesn't have the power in his hands. I think Mike Perry does have an advantage, but, that's definitely more fun than the next two fights, in my opinion. Because we have the co-main Francis Ngannou taking on Felipe Lins in 5-5s. The Diaz-Perry's 5-5s as well. I'm sure Nate Diaz made sure that was in the agreement. Francis Ngannou is going to dog walk Felipe Lins. And then Ronda Rousey, Gina Carano. Again, I really could care less. I think Ronda wins via armbar. But solid little card for what MVP can do. I'm sure they're paying these guys way too much money. I will tune in. We will recap it, but don't get your hopes up. That's all I am saying. I do think the Makayev fight is probably the highlight of the card. So we had PFL Madrid last weekend. Not a great card, but we did have a couple fights we'll break down. AJ McKee got a unanimous decision over Adam Borics. Good win for AJ McKee. And then a very weird finish, but Costello Van Steenis keeping his belt with a round 3 TKO over Fabian Edwards. Fabian just wouldn't give up on a double leg, and he landed a couple short elbows, and all of a sudden he was asleep. One of the more weird elbow TKOs I think I've ever seen. But that does set us up for a potential Costello rematch for the title against... God, why am I blanking on his name right now? That's how much Bellator's put me to sleep. And I've been breaking it down damn near every time they have an event against Johnny Eblin. I try to get it a chance. The product just never really comes through. But they're going to the Steel City this weekend. PFL Pittsburgh, main card at 7 p.m. Pacific on ESPN2. The prelims at 4 p.m. Pacific on ESPN+. We have Jacob Kazuba taking on Nathan Schulte. Jack Cartwright taking on Ellen Bagasso. Bryce Meredith was supposed to fight Jack. He pulled out due to injury. Definitely a bummer there. A guy who just defeated Bryce Meredith, Lazaro Dayron, taking on Jacob Thrall. We have 7-0 undefeated Alexi Pregandi taking on Julio Arce, former UFC athlete. Another former UFCer, Ariana Da Silva, taking on Sumika Inaba. Dalton Rosta taking on Impa Kasaganai. That's a fun one. Should end up in a knockout. And then Johnny Eblin taking on Brian Battle. I expect Johnny to make slight work of Brian Battle. But solid card, more fights worth tuning into than the PFL Madrid card, in my opinion. We also have RAF 7 going on. We have Taj Miraz Salkazanov taking on Jason Nolf. This will be Saturday as well in Tampa Bay, Florida. Patrick Downey taking on Trent Hidley. NCAA champion and RAF champion Wyatt Hendrickson taking on Trent Hilger. We have Bo Bassett taking on Kinchelgashvili, who I saw win, another Georgian, almost like Merab Dvalishvili. He won when I saw him here in Tempe. We have Kyle Snyder taking on Ahmed Tuzudinov. Fantastic matchup. Another great one, Kyle Dake taking on Parker Keckeisen. You know, these guys, a lot of them NCAA champs in folk style. Freestyle is definitely more interesting. Interested to see how Keckeisen does with the freestyle. We have Colby Covington taking on Dylan Dennis. We'll see if Dennis shows up. I think Colby will smoke him, though. And then we get the much-anticipated rematch, Arman Sarukian taking on Giorgio Poyas. I hope we see a takedown. I do expect Arman to win. That was the highlight of my Raf Tempe in-person viewership. And there is a lot of hype around that. They were going to do it in Brazil, but Raf said, we want you guys to do it under our promotion. So it'll be going down on Saturday. This past weekend, we had the NCAA championships. I'm a big March Madness basketball guy. I do love Madness. Usually I record them, but I did get to watch them live. I thought it was better than the basketball games. And how about Oklahoma State, the Cowboys? And how about the freshmen? In the 125-pound weight class, we had the number 1 ranked Luke Lildehall with a 2-1 victory over 10th ranked Mark Anthony McGowan out of Princeton. Penn State getting the win, but a number 10 ranked guy in the championship. That's the shit you love to see. And he battled good, 2-1. We had, in 133, we had freshman number 1 ranked Jack Forrest out of Oklahoma State with a 5-2 victory over Ben DeVino out of Ohio State. A very good Ben DeVino. Jack Forrest showing out for the freshman. At 141, Oklahoma State did it again. A freshman number 2 ranked Sergio Vega out of Oklahoma State with a 4-1 win over Jesse Mendez out of Ohio State, who was a previous runner-up and former NCAA champion. And Sergio Vega had an amazing semifinal matchup as well. Tall, lanky, skinny kid, unique style, very fun to watch. Jesse Mendez looks like just a fucking absolute unit. So definitely shows you at wrestling that the bigger, buffer guy doesn't always win. At 149, we had a number 10 again in the championship. We had Aiden Valencia out of Stanford with an 8-5 victory over number 1 Shane Van Ness out of Penn State. You got to feel for Shane Van Ness, still short of his dream, but bravo to Aiden Valencia handling Shane Van Ness and just outdoing him. Was very aggressive, going for takedowns, always had Shane on his back foot, was very impressed with that matchup. At 157, we had another freshman out of Oklahoma State, 5th-ranked Landon Robidoux, with a 4-2 victory over number 2 Antrell Taylor out of Nebraska. A very good Antrell Taylor, so this Oklahoma State team, watch out for them in the coming years. At 165, we had Penn State number 1 getting the victory, Mitchell Messenbrink, way too easy with a tech fall, 20-4 over Iowa's 3rd-ranked Mikey Caliendo. He even went to shake his hand on the podium. He didn't want to have anything about it. Penn State-Iowa rival runs deep. At 174, we had a 2-time with number 1 ranked Levi Haynes out of Penn State with a 2-1 victory over the 3rd-ranked Christopher Minto out of Nebraska. At 184, we had 3rd-ranked Max McNelly out of Minnesota with a 4-3 victory over number 1 ranked Rocco Welsh out of Penn State. Penn State, we'll talk about them in a second, still handled business, but a lot of their top dudes not getting championships. We had at 197, number 1 ranked Josh Barr out of Penn State with a 6-3 victory over 7th-ranked Cody Morrell out of Oklahoma State. That would have been a crazy upset. And at heavyweight 285, we had 2-ranked Isaac Trumbull out of North Carolina State with a 5-0 victory over number 1 ranked Younger Batista out of Iowa State. Again, this is just the finals. The semifinals are great. Some of the guys that earned All-American, which means you place. Fantastic. The Wyoming Cowboy team doing great. I think they had a 3rd-place finisher and a couple, like 5th or 7th. But Penn State beat their own record of total team points in an NCAA championship with 181.5, their previous high 177. But again, Oklahoma State, I think 2nd or 3rd. They are going to be a team that could finally push Penn State to the brink. If you've never watched the NCAAs, I highly recommend it, especially you former wrestlers. A lot of these guys, now that there's the RAF opportunity, will probably go to RAF. but opportunity to go to the UFC or MMA in general. But let's talk about UFC London. Almost clean sweep. For some reason, UFC London always does me well. I went 12-1 on the picks. So overall, 848 wins, 415 losses, 12 no contests and draws. Out to a hot start on the year, 68 wins, 25 losses. To recap this card, this is definitely playing into the UFC is losing its luster crowd. It was pretty meh overall, not going to lie. I thought the main event under-delivered in a weird series of events. I figure probably one good fight on the card. London also wasn't sold out. Usually they have a crazy crowd. There wasn't much for them to get it excited about. I only recapped this a 3 out of 10. I'm pretty sure I previewed it a 5 out of 10. There were some good fights that we did not break down that went on early. We had Chanel Dyer with a round 2 TKO over Ravina Oliveira. Performance of the night, 100 G's to Chanel. We had Brando Pericic with a round 1 TKO over Louis Sutherland. Danny Silva with a round 2 TKO over Curtis Campbell, who was a big favorite. Iwu Baranowski with a round 1 TKO over Austin Lane. Another performance of the night, 100 G's for Iwu. Austin Lane, I was surprised, made weight at light heavyweight, but clearly that affected his durability as he did not last long. We will recap 2 fights in the prelims, debatably some of the better fights. We had Nathaniel Wood with a split decision victory over Lucien Kita. This is a nice dog play that I had, but boy does Nathaniel Wood always just razor thin margins, man. I mean, to the point of razor thin margins, this was a very, very close fight, but I do think Wood won it due to striking from distance. It seemed like Wood really didn't want to close in. He kind of stayed at kicking range for majority of the fight. And he was picking at Kita, circling a lot in the first round. I gave him the first very small margin of total volume. And Lassim seemed to kind of just be waiting for the perfect moment. He wasn't able to get in with Wood's kicks because when he wasn't kicking, he had a nice jab as well that kept him at bay. I did give Lucien round 2 because he did land some bigger shots. He threw with more heat behind them as well and had some damage. But I had it 1-1 going into a winner-takes-all round 3. And round 3, Lucien definitely probably knew he needed to go for it. Seemed to be more willing to exchange, but he never pushed Nathaniel back. Wood basically landed a right kick and a clubbing left for most of the fight. Just boom, 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 majority of that round. And Lucien, when he did throw, he was very telegraphed in doing so. He was loaded with his hands. I wasn't impressed by him. I know he's thought pretty highly of. I wasn't impressed with Nathaniel either in this moment because neither man really went for it and took many chances. Especially at the end of this fight, anyone could have won it, but Kita was throwing a jab and bouncing around for the final minutes of the fight. Like, come on, man, this is your UFC debut. You don't have many chances to come in here when you take a loss, but a big win for Wood regardless. He should be in the mix of the top 15 of the division, and Lucien is going to have to fight his way back into the mix, but he is young enough to do so if he stays active. But I wanted to see some dog in these guys. You didn't see it. I just think all the training you put in, the weight cutting, the nutrition, the time away from family, and you just go out and do bare minimum, it eats me up knowing what's on the line for these guys. Statistically, Nathaniel landed 67 total and significant strikes. He was 0 for 1 in takedown attempts. Lucien landed 52 total and significant, so 15 less. And Wood now extends that winning streak to 4, back to 2024. And Lucien ends that 5-fight winning streak. He starts a new losing streak in his UFC debut. So what's next? I really do think Nathaniel deserves to fight in the rankings. To do so, though, he's probably going to have to wait some time or maybe fight somebody like Josh Emmett or even a scrap with Brian Ortega. We don't really know what's going on with him. And for Lucien, how about a fight with Andre Fili? I think that would be fantastic. Moving on to the fight of the night, deservingly so. No surprise here. A Mason Jones fight is always a sight to see. as Mason Jones got the unanimous decision over Axel Sola, fight of the night, 100 Gs. And Axel is actually moving down in weight classes, looked absolutely shredded. He put Mason in a very bad spot in round 1 after landing a spinning technique. Then Jones cut Axel up with a bad knee and seemed to be coming on until Sola got a takedown to finish the round. And due to that, I gave Sola round 1. The rest of the fight, Mason showed how game he is and just started to get after it. Axel was beaten and bloodied, and Mason landed a couple 2-strike combos where he followed up with knees and had a very beautiful head kick. In the winner takes all round 3, Mason landed a big head kick that wobbled Sola early. Sola, he's tough, he's durable, he hung in there. It was a back and forth final round, but Mason looked like the more fresher fighter. I think Axel was pretty wobbled, and Mason did more to win the fight. Almost got a finish at the buzzer, put a stamp on it. Massive win for Mason Jones. Tough loss for Sola going down, but he does seem like a problem in the division. Statistically, Mason landed 123 total strikes, 110 of them significant. Axel landed 68 total, 65 significant, so quite a bit less. He had 3 takedowns in 7 attempts, so less than 50%, and had 2 minutes and 19 seconds of control time. How about Mason Jones extending that winning streak to 7-3-0 in his UFC return? Axel ends that nice, pristine 11-fight winning streak. He starts a new losing streak and is 1-1 in the UFC. So what's next? I think you could debate Mason being in the top 15, but I think a fight with Cowie Fernandez, who's on a winning streak as well, is ideal. And for Axel, he could take on Joaquim Silva. Moving on to the main card, we had Christian Leroy Duncan with the unanimous decision over Roman Dolidze. And we knew Roman was going to rely on his grappling in this fight, and he did start it with kind of a cheeky takedown. But Dolidze wasn't able to do much with it, as CLD was pretty calm, eventually got out, and Roman did land a couple of weird spinning short elbows. But when the fight was standing, CLD was going to work, and it seemed like Roman didn't want to stand and exchange with him at all. But I did have Roman going up in round 1. In round 2, Dolidze seemed to be slowing down, and CLD continued to pick at him at range as well. But after Roman had some control time against the cage, CLD really started attacking, and Roman actually fell down attempting a takedown. That set up for another winner-takes-all round 3, but it was a sloppy fight overall. CLD was just too fast and elusive for Roman. Roman somehow fell into a weird takedown attempt with about 3 minutes left in the round and eventually got CLD in a body triangle, but again wasn't able to do much besides a little bit of kind of tappy ground and pound. But CLD edged the fight in a close, sloppy affair. I would have liked to see CLD let go a little bit more, but Roman was desperate getting this fight to the ground. Statistically, Roman only landed 40 total strikes, only 10 significant. He had 3 takedowns in 4 attempts with 7 minutes and 7 seconds of control time. And Christian landed 78 total strikes, 54 of them significant. He was 0 for 2 in takedowns with 1 minute and 8 seconds of control time. So Christian extends his winning streak to 4. He is 5-1 since 2024. He enters the rankings at number 12. And Roman extends that losing streak to 2. He's an even 3-3 since 2024, and he drops 4 spots in the rankings to number 15. So what's next? Well, CLD is definitely in the big leagues now. I think a fight with the Killa Gorilla, Jared Cannonier, is next step for him. And for Roman, how about Abus Magomedov? This kind of summed up the card. This debatably is the worst fight I've ever seen since the Rose Namajunas-Carla Esparza fight, and it was eerily familiar. As you know, with MVP fights, there's not a lot of action unless the opponent is willing to engage. Regardless, Michael Page with the unanimous decision over Sam Patterson. Again, why this fight was booked in the first place, I have no clue. But with MVP style, you either get action or you don't. It's going to be coming down if his opponent is willing to close that distance and make it a fight. Well, Sam wasn't, and not much happened besides MVP bouncing in and out of his stance, landing very low volume, and Sam trying to get MVP into a clinch situation and take him down. That was really it. You know, these two have trained before in the past as well, so they are familiar. But round one, Page landed 5 strikes to Sam's 4. Round 2, 11 to Sam's 5. And round 3, 17 to his 16. So again, not much happening. None of those were devastating blows. It's a bummer. The situation with MVP does not seem very happy with the UFC. I don't really blame him. I'm sure the UFC isn't happy with him either. I don't really blame him. Hopefully it works out. But looking at the stats, MVP landed 33 total strikes, 27 of them significant. Sam landed 25 total, only 12 significant, was 0 for 2 in takedowns with 2 minutes and 47 seconds of control time, which was really clinch time. Regardless, MVP extends that winning streak to 3. He is 4-1 since 2024. He does move up 1 spot to number 12. And Sam ends that 4-fight winning streak. He's 5-2 in the UFC. So what do they do with MVP next? I would like to see him get a fight that could potentially be a great fight. We've seen MVP have some moments. Let's book MVP with Leon Edwards. I know they're both from the UK, but the UFC probably won't give him many choices either. And for Sam, he could square up with Chidi and Njokuani. And that set us up for the main event. I was really absolutely hyped for this fight. But regardless, someone was going to lose their O, and it ended up being the hometown fighter, Lerone Murphy, as Movsar Evloev had a majority decision over Lerone Murphy. But the way this had shaked out is kind of put a damper on the fight, and the card was already had a damper on it in the main card anyways. But a big reason I was looking forward to this fight so much is both men are so technical, well-rounded. I expected this to be fireworks, maybe not huge striking exchanges, but good grappling exchanges, high IQ fighting, and boy was I wrong. I really don't know what was going on in the O2 that evening, but I felt like I was kind of watching the MVP fight here. I didn't catch the full thing live in my first viewing. On my first viewing, I expected at best a draw or a Murphy decision, but watching it back, you just can't trust the stats that you see when you look at ESPN or the UFC, especially the significant strike stat, because there's no way Lerone landed 14 significant strikes, as he pretty much missed on everything besides leg kicks in the first round. And when he did throw leg kicks, Movsar checked them, which isn't a significant strike in my book. Anyways, Movsar definitely was the pressure fighter and the only fighter to land much of anything in round 1, so I did have him up 1-0 going into round 2. Round 2 was pretty eerily similar as well, except that they doubled their volume, and Murphy actually landed some strikes, so I did have it 1-1 going into round 3. But the biggest thing on everyone's mind is how is Lerone going to do with Movsar's takedown attempts? He did not grapple the first 2 rounds at all, and I wonder if that's the UFC brass saying, hey, we need more exciting fights if you want to fight for the title. Maybe he trusted his striking. You know, he technically ended up with the win, but it was just a weird, everything this whole card was weird. The play-by-play team themselves also at some point were like, hey, why is Movsar not having multiple takedown attempts? But again, I think he wanted to prove that he could stand or strike, or the UFC kind of forced his hand. But once he went for the takedown, he got an easy takedown to start the round. And Lerone did a great job getting back up. He's very hard to hold down. Movsar in round 3 continued to pressure Lerone, and Murphy was trying to hold his ground with a lot of kicks and combos. But again, there wasn't a lot of volume here, and Movsar didn't land enough volume, so I had it go 2-1 Lerone going into round 3. Movsar did have a good last 10 seconds, but it wasn't enough for me to give him the round. Now, round 4, we started with another kick to the cup. Movsar was deducted a point in this round. He definitely won the round in a dominant fashion. Supposedly, Lerone Murphy injured his hip or popped his hip out in this round as well, which, looking back at it, I'm not too surprised. But because he had deducted a point, he didn't win the round. So I had it going 2-1-1 into round 5. And round 5 was much of the same. And credit to Lerone for getting back up and being taken down again with an injured hip, pretty seriously injured hip. I just didn't think it should have been I just did think it should have been a draw. I'm glad it wasn't a draw. Hopefully Mozart does get the title shot next, but who knows? It's still not announced. And again, the judging, absolutely horrendous. How Mozart won this fight, I'm not too sure. You look at the judges' scorecards, everyone was all over the place. Really put a damper on the main event and the card as a whole. But when we look at the stats, it does look like Mozart won. He had 124 total strikes, 86 of them significant. He had 9 takedowns and 10 attempts. If he wanted it, he got it. He could have done that early, but he didn't. And he had 3 minutes and 54 seconds of control time. Massive credit to Lerone Murphy. If you're taken down 9 times and you have less than 4 minutes of total control time, very, very impressive. And Lerone landed 89 total and significant strikes. So technically 3 more significant, but 30 less total. So now Mozart stays undefeated, extends that winning streak to 20. He is 4-0 in the UFC since 2023. And Lerone suffers his first pro defeat. He is 6-1 since 2023. It has to be Mozart and Volkanovski next. If it's not, it's a damn shame. And for Lerone, I'm assuming with the hip injury, he's going to be out for some time. But I'd love to see him fight John Silva or Yair Rodriguez upon his return. Weird night. Thanks for Mason Jones. The Nathaniel Wood fight, decent. But yeah, definitely a snooze fest. I'm pretty sure this weekend, back where I used to live in the PNW at Climate Pledge Arena, it will be different. We have UFC Fight Night Seattle prelims at 2 p.m. Pacific, main card 5 p.m. Pacific. Of course, all on Paramount Plus. To preview this card, the prelims have a bunch of good fights. I think the prelims will be better than this entire card. There's good matchmaking, and there is some good ranked scraps as well. The main card is absolutely action-packed. We get 6 fights, a very fun main and co-main. I'm interested to see how the Seattle crowd shows out, but I am previewing this a 7 out of 10. Some good fights we will not break down. We have 13th ranked Alexa Tanara taking on Bruna Brazil, and Dana White Contender Series alum Lyrian Douglas taking on Julian Arosa. But let's kick this off in the prelims with the home state fighter, Ricky Simone, 33 years old with a 22-7 record, taking on Adrian Yanez, 32 years old with a 17-6 record. This is a very fun fight early on. I'm shocked that it's this early on the card. Both men are in their middle of their primes at 33 and 32. Both men also kind of have their backs against the wall. The time is now for them if they want to have any chance in a very deep bantamweight division. Adrian hasn't fought since December of 2024 when he lost a very tough split decision. And Ricky lost to veteran Yoni Barcelos his last time out. So again, just emphasize how much of a must-win this is if you want to stick with the UFC and make some bread. But I do think Ricky is more well-rounded with solid MMA grappling. Adrian is mostly a boxer, but he is a very good boxer and should have advantages in boxing exchanges. I don't know if we'll see many of them, though. Breaking it down, Ricky trains out of Syndicate MMA. He has a black belt in BJJ. He has the second most takedowns landed in bantamweight division history with 44. That's only behind Merab Dvalishvili, the Machine. He has the latest finish in a UFC 3-round bout at the 5th minute mark in round 3 against Merab Dvalishvili, which I believe was his UFC debut. He's a King of the Cage, Titan FC, Contender Series, and LFA alum and former champion with 1 successful title defense. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 2-4 since 2023. 7 of his 22 wins are via knockout. Now, Adrian has an orthodox stance. He has a black belt in BJJ. You would never know it watching his fights. He's a Legacy FC, Fury FC, Bellator, LFA, and Contender Series alum. These guys have had to earn their spots to the UFC. Again, emphasizing how important this is for them. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 1-3 since 2023. 11 of his 17 wins are via knockout. 2 of his 6 losses are also via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Ricky tries to stand and trade early, then in the back half of the first round mixes in some takedowns, unless he's having his way with the striking. But Adrian, a great boxer. He doesn't kick as much, but not sure how Yanez is going to look after all the time off. I'm just going to assume he's going to be the best version of himself today. This is probably going to come down to the wire in a very close decision battle, and whoever has the better cardio, or maybe someone gets cut or has a bigger damaging moment in the fight. For the sake of picking, I'm going to assume Ricky wins with his grappling, so I'm taking Ricky Simone, but I'm absolutely avoiding this on any bets or parlays where possible. It's a fun fight, though. Moving on, we have Navajo Sterling, 28 years old with an undefeated 8-0 record, taking on Bruno, the Brazilian Cowboy Lopez, 32 years old with a 14-2 record. Now, this is a solid light heavyweight fight. 2 somewhat newer faces to the UFC. Bruno is trying to avenge his loss from about a year ago, and Navajo is looking to continue moving up the rankings as he looks like a promising fighter. But he has been more of a decision fighter in the UFC, so I'm hoping to see more of that killer instinct here because Bruno's very hittable. Breaking this down, City Kickboxing's busy this evening as Navajo trains out of City Kickboxing. Obviously, he has a kickboxing style. He's a Contender Series alum. He's undefeated on an 8-fight winning streak, 4-0 in the UFC, and 4 of his 8 wins are via knockout. He also has a 4.5-inch reach advantage. Now, Bruno is a Jungle Fight, LFA alum, and former champion. He's also a Contender Series 2-time alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 2-1 in the UFC. 6 of his 14 wins are via knockout, 5 via submission, so 11 of his 14 wins are via finish. Now, I'm pretty sure Bruno's going to try to take Navajo down, but with the success Dustin Jacoby had against Bruno as a long kickboxer, I expect Sterling to be too powerful and too fast for Bruno. If Bruno can take Navajo down and hold him there to wear on him, especially early in the fight, he could have some success, but I'm not betting on that. I'm taking Navajo Sterling. We are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. Some fun action in women's MMA as we get the return of Casey King O'Neill. 28 years old with a 10-2 record and the number 12 next to her name, taking on Gabriela Gabby Fernandez. 32 years old with an 11-3 record and the number 14 next to her name. Now, Casey's making a return after more than a year off due to a knee injury. Casey has definitely shown some promise in her career, and now that she's in her prime, she has to get a ranked win to stay in the mix. But Gabrielle is on a roll right now and gets another tough opponent. I expect this to be another close fight between 2 women who are well-rounded. Breaking this down, Casey has a kickboxing style. She had previously trained out of Fight Ready, but she's been training out of Bang Tao in Thailand. She has a brown belt in BJJ. She was the 2021 Newcomer of the Year. She's a UAE Warriors alum. She's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 1-2 since 2023. And she has a 3-inch reach advantage. Now, Gabriella is an LFA alum and former champion. She's on a 3-fight winning streak, 3-2 since 2023, and 4 of her 11 wins are via submission. This is another fight that really is as close as it gets, because we don't know what to expect from Casey after the time off, but she has good takedown defense, so we might see most of this fight standing. I do expect Casey to be more technical, but Gabriella might have the speed advantage. There's a lot on the line in this fight, so hopefully the fight showcases that. But I am taking Casey O'Neill, but I'm avoiding this on any parlays where possible. Moving on, still in the prelims, we have Marcin Tybura, 40 years old with a 27-10 record and the number 8 next to his name, taking on Tyrell Fortune, 35 years old with a 17-3 record. Now, Tyrell is coming from LXF of late. Definitely kind of a weird booking. Tyrell at 35 years old to give him a top 10 ranked opponent in Tybura. But the heavyweight division needs new blood, so I'm for it. Tyrell has spent most of his time with Bellator and PFL, and now he gets an older and savvy veteran who is very well-rounded. Breaking this down, Marcin has a black belt in BJJ. He's an M1 alum and former champion. He has the second most decision wins in UFC history with 8, behind Andrei Arlovsky. He has the third most fight time in UFC heavyweight history with 4 hours, 9 minutes, 26 seconds behind Arlovsky. He has the second most control time in UFC heavyweight history, 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 30 seconds. The second most top position time in heavyweight history, 56 minutes and 31 seconds. He has the second most total strikes landed in UFC heavyweight history, 1,622, behind Arlovsky. He's tied with Junior Dos Santos for third most bouts in UFC heavyweight history with 23. He's on a one-fight losing streak and is 4-3 since 2023. 10 of his 27 wins are via knockout, 7 via submission. So 17 of his 27 wins via finish, and 6 of his 10 losses are via knockout. Now, Tyrell trains out of the Black Zillions Performance Institute. He's a Bellator, PFL, and Ruff alum. He's on a 3-fight winning streak and is 4-1 since 2024. 11 of his 17 wins are via knockout. I'm assuming the UFC signed Tyrell for his knockout capabilities, and he's going to have a real chance to get another one here because Marcin has been knocked out in round 1 in his last fight, and he does have a ton of fighting miles on him. I do expect Marcin to stand and trade for a bit, but I'm assuming he's going to look to get the fight down to the canvas, and if he succeeds in that department, he should win. It's hard for me to pick Tyrell. It's hard for me to pick a 40-year-old. It's really a toss-up. For the sake of picking, I'm taking Marcin Tybura, but again, avoiding this on any parlays, absolutely. Still in the prelims, a couple hometown kids. We get Chase the Dream Hooper, 26 years old with a 16-4-1 record, taking on Lance Fearless Gibson Jr., 31 years old with a 9-2 record. Now, I'm excited to see Chase back in the octagon. He's finally maturing a bit. You know, he signed with the UFC back in 2019. Lance is in his prime at 31. He's going to look to spoil that hometown reunion because he's also born and raised in Seattle. Lance is going to have to win this if he wants to stick with the UFC, and Chase is rebounding from his first loss in 3 years. Now, Chase, as we know, has insane grappling and BJJ. Lance is kind of tall as well, so Chase isn't going to have that height advantage that he typically does. But it's going to be a challenge everywhere for the young fighter. Lance is pretty well-rounded and looked good in his short notice bout, so now he gets a full training camp in the UFC. Breaking this down, Chase has a black belt in BJJ. He's a Contender Series, Island Fights, Cage Fury, and Titan FC alum. He's on a one-fight losing streak and is 5-1 since 2023. 8 of his 16 wins are via submission. 2 of his 4 losses via knockout. Now, Lance is a Bellator alum. He's on a one-fight losing streak, which was in his UFC debut. 4 of his 9 wins are via knockout, 3 via submission, so 7 of his 9 wins via finish. I do expect this to be a fun, competitive fight, but Chase has really impressed me with his growth each fight. I believe he's going to beat up Lance and lead with his striking to get into takedown opportunities and eventually get a submission victory, but I expect this to be another close decision. For the sake of picking, I'm taking Chase Hooper, but I'm avoiding this on any parlays. Chase still has a lot of room to grow with his striking. Now we finally get a prelim headliner. I am absolutely stoked for this fight. Kind of a weird booking, but I think this has fight of the night potential. We have Ignacio La Hala Bahamondes, 28 years old with a 17-6 record, taking on Tofik Musayev, 36 years old with a 22-6 record. I'm just glad we get to see Tofik in the UFC again. He was actually originally booked to take on Samuel Sanchez. So I say it's a weird booking because he's just coming off the Contender Series. Samuel is. He's only 23 years old. And now he's fighting a young stud who has started getting a crack at the best in the lightweight division and has a promising future and is very well-rounded as well. Now, Tofik is mostly a kickboxer. So if Ignacio wants to take him down and manhandle, he could probably manhandle him. But I think this fight is going to be a blast as long as it stays standing. If Tofik can somehow pull off this victory, he's going to have a ton of runway and opportunities in the UFC. Breaking this down, Ignacio trains out of Valley Flow Striking. 3 of his last 4 fights have been performance of the night. He shows up, he shows out. He's an Island Fights, Titan FC, LFA, and Contender Series alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 4-2 since 2023. 11 of his 17 wins are via knockout, and he has a 6.5-inch reach advantage. Now, Tofik is a Ryzen alum and former champion. He's also a Bellator alum. That's where I saw him. I saw one Bellator event in Tacoma, Washington, and he looked amazing. So I was excited about his potential. Figured he'd eventually come to the UFC. He did. They booked him against a very tough Miktabik Orolbai. So I'm glad he gets better a stylistic matchup here. Tough jump, though, from Samuel Sanchez to Ignacio Bahamondes. Now, Tofik is on a 1-fight losing streak. He is 2-2 since 2023. Of course, 0-1 in the UFC. 18 of his 22 wins are via knockout, and 4 of his 6 losses are via submission. So again, I think if Ignacio could get this down, it'll play into his favor. Now, Tofik was ran through by a very good grappler in Orolbai, but he did have back-to-back knockouts in 2023 with Ryzen after not fighting in 2024. It is a bummer that he's kind of lost some of his prime years, being wasted with the Bellator PFL promotion and being a free agent, but he should be fresh. I think he's going to look to take Ignacio's head off, but Ignacio has that length advantage. He's creative with the striking. I assume he looks for opportunities to get this up against the cage, find himself in the clinch, look for takedowns and submissions as well. For that reason, I'm taking Ignacio Bahamondes. We are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Again, I get it. Not every Saturday shows out for the UFC. We haven't even hit the main card. Ricky Simon, Adrian Yanez. Fantastic fight. Sterling Bruno, I assume a lopsided fight, but should be fun. Casey O'Neill, Gabriela Fernandez, 2 top-ranked fighters. Big-time fight. Very random Tyrell Fortune, Tibera fight. Chase Hooper, Lance Gibson, both from the Seattle area. Fantastic fight. Ignacio Tofik, awesome fight. And that sets us up for the main card. We also get another guy from Spokane Valley, but in the Washington State. We get Terrence T-Rex McKinney, 31 years old with a 17-8 record, taking on Kyle the Monster Nelson, 34 years old with a 17-6-1 record. If you haven't seen Terrence McKinney fight, just know what you're getting with the T-Rex fight. You can't blink. He hasn't been out of the first round since 2023, and that's only happened twice. The rest of his 12 UFC fights have been done in the first round. He's a killer-be-killed fighter. He's in his prime at 31, coming off a choke loss. I think Terrence is going to come right at Kyle, but he's going to probably show a little bit more measured aggression. We've seen some of that because sometimes he puts himself in a bad spot. And Kyle, he's kind of underrated. He's a tough veteran who has had some nice wins of late. I don't know if he's ready for this fight because he was steamrolled by Steve Garcia, who has a similar fighting style last year. Breaking this down, Terrence has a purple belt in BJJ. He has a D2 wrestling background at a North Idaho college and Chaudhry State College. He's a Contender Series and LFA alum. He has the fastest finish, knockout, and debut in UFC lightweight history with 7 seconds against Matt Frivola. He has the shortest average fight time in UFC lightweight history, 2 minutes and 25 seconds. That's insane with how many UFC fights he's had. He has the highest striking differential in UFC lightweight history at 3.87. Just think about some of the lightweights, Conor McGregor, Max Holloway. I mean, the list goes on, and he has that. Pretty impressive. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 2-2 since 2024. 9 of his 17 wins are via submission, mostly because he beats guys up then takes their backs. 8 via knockout, so all 17 of his wins via finish. 5 of his 8 losses are also via knockout. Now, Kyle has a brown belt in BJJ. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 4-1-1 since 2023. 6 of his 17 wins are via knockout, 4 via submission, so 10 of his 17 wins are via finish, and 3 of his 6 losses are via knockout. Now, I think Terrence is going to bring the fight to Kyle no matter what. It's going to depend on how Kyle handles that. Does he look to take McKinney down and get into scrambles, or does he think he could time a big shot based off of Terrence's aggression? Well, I think Terrence, again, is a little bit measured. You know, we're talking about Terrence McKinney, a little bit measured. I think he does well mixing in attacks to get in control in round 1, potentially get a finish or set the job up for round 2. But again, Kyle is a solid fighter everywhere. I just don't think he's going to be able to handle that 0 to 100 pace that is going to start this fight. For that reason, I'm taking Terrence McKinney. We are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. We get Mansour Abdul Malik, 28 years old with an undefeated 9-0-1 record, taking on Yusri Belgari, 33 years old with a 9-3 record. Now, this is just a fight between two powerhouses looking to make a name for themselves with all the MMA fan base. Mansour really hasn't been tested yet and has dominated with his explosiveness and athleticism. You know, Yusri has been taken deeper early, but has got the finishes as well due to his power and explosiveness. He has a very good kickboxing background, has fought the likes of Alex Bejeda and Israel Adesanya. So don't blink in this fight. This one's going to be very fun as well. Breaking this down, Mansour is an LFA and Contender Series alum. He's undefeated on a 9-fight winning streak. He does have a draw mixed in. He's 4-0-1 in the UFC, and 7 of his 9 wins are via knockout. Now, Yusri, of course, has a kickboxing style. He has an orthodox stance. He's a UAE Warriors Contender Series 2-time and Glory alum and former middleweight Glory champion. He's 2-0 in the UFC. 7 of his 9 wins are via knockout, and he has a 4-inch leg reach advantage, which could play part to the kickboxing. Now, I expect both of these men to be eager for a highlight finish, especially with some of the fights prior to them. If they want to get a bonus, they're going to have to get after it. I think that's, a finish here could really boost these guys' stock. I feel like Mansour is going to be faster. Yusri is going to be more technical. He has more fighting prowess, so to speak. Either man has the potential to knock each other out, but I also wouldn't be shocked if Mansour looks for takedowns early and often, and I think that's the difference. If this fight stays standing, unless Mansour lands a big shot, I expect Yusri to pick him apart, but I think he'll use that big frame to take him down because Yusri doesn't have enough experience in that department. For that reason, I'm taking Mansour Abdul Malik, but I'm avoiding this on any parlays. This will be a big test for Malik. Moving on, the big retirement fight, the former mentor and coach of Terrence McKinney, also from Spokane Valley. We get Michael Maverick Chiesa, 38 years old with a 19-7 record, taking on Nico the Hybrid Price, 36 years old with a 16-10 record. Now, I don't know where Nico's training was prior to this, but this is a very short notice fight. No disrespect to Nico, but probably an easier fight. And I think they've announced that this is his retirement fight as well. But Michael missed last year's Seattle card, which it's been the first time it's in Seattle for a long time. And he really wanted to make sure this one happened in his home state. He was supposed to get Carlson Harris, which is a little bit different fighting style. But I do think he has the advantage because he's had a full camp. And Nico Price is on a 3-fight losing streak and is definitely, at the back half of his career athletically. But this could potentially be both men's final UFC walk. Maybe the fight shakes out a certain way. One of them doesn't, but I think this being in Seattle, Michael Chiesa being an analyst, this is definitely the last dance. Breaking this fight down, Michael has a wrestling and kickboxing style. He trains out of Syndicate MMA with a black belt in BJJ. He's the Ultimate Fighter 15 alum and champion. That's where I had come to know Michael Chiesa. He has the fewest strikes absorbed per minute in UFC welterweight history at .94. He has the most submission losses by Darce choke in UFC history with 3. He's tied with Kenny Florian for second most rear naked choke submissions in UFC history with 7, behind BJJ legend Damian Maia. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. He's 3-1 since 2023. 12 of his 19 wins are via submission. 5 of his 7 losses are also via submission. So to submit or be submitted. Now Nico has a brown belt in BJJ. He's on a 3-fight losing streak and is 1-4 since 2023. 10 of his 16 wins are via knockout. 6 of his 10 losses are also via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. I expect both of these vets to meet in the middle. Nico's going to look to close distance or get a takedown. Chiesa's going to look to beat him up a little bit with some kicks at distance and get takedowns of his own. So I do expect high action, high pace, but I do expect Michael Chiesa to have a pretty big advantage here. And I think he goes out on top in a retirement fight. I'm sure they'll have a package for him. For that reason, I'm taking Michael Chiesa by submission. I'm putting that on the parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on to the co-main. These are some very exciting fights. We have Alexa Grasso, 32 years old with a 16-5-1 record and the number 3 next to her name, taking on Macy Barber, 27 years old with a 15-2 record and the number 5 next to her name. Now, I'm excited for this flyweight showdown because these are 2 of the best women in the division, and they have a lot on the line. Not only is Macy on a very impressive winning streak, but she's had challenges with her health of late, some challenges making weight, so I just hope she's fully healthy for the showdown. Because Alexa is looking to regain control of the top of the division after really a gauntlet of fights. Valentina Shevchenko, the GOAT in my book, 3 times. Natalia Silva. These 2 actually fought back in 2021 when Macy was only 21 years old. In that fight, Macy had 3 takedowns, but Alexa had more control time and outstruck her in that fight. Breaking this down, Alexa trains out of Lobo Gym MMA. She has a brown belt in BJJ. She's a former flyweight champion with 1 successful title defense. She's the first Mexican woman to win a UFC championship. She has the 3rd most significant strikes thrown in a 3-round fight with 369 against Karolina Kowalkiewicz. She had the 2023 Submission of the Year and Upset of the Year against Valentina Shevchenko. Fantastic moment that she had. That also got her the 2023 Female Fighter of the Year. She's an Invicta alum. She's on a 2-fight losing streak. Is only 1-2-1 since 2023. A lot of the time in women's MMA that don't look good, but again, Valentina 3 times, Natalia Silva, and she did beat Valentina. And a draw. Now, Macy has a karate style. She trains out of Team Alpha Male. She has a purple belt in BJJ and a second degree black belt in karate. She's tied with Manon Fiorot for second most knockouts in UFC women's flyweight history with 3, only behind Valentina. She's tied with Caitlin Sermonara for second most wins in UFC flyweight history with 9. She's tied with Manon Fiorot for third longest win streak in UFC flyweight history with 7. Again, she's only 27. She had the 2025 Comeback Fighter of the Year. She's an LFA and Contender Series alum. She's on a 7-fight winning streak, 4-0 since 2023, and 6 of her 15 wins are via knockout. Now, I really think this fight could play out various ways. I'm really glad Macy's returning to the octagon fairly quickly with what happened with her in the Blanchfield fight. Although they fought back in 2021, since she's been on this winning streak, I do think this is her toughest test yet. I think we're going to see a really good Alexa. I'm surprised she's the underdog, to be honest, because she was initially preparing for Rose Namajunas, and she's kind of in must-win territory if she wants to stick in contention. She's had almost a year off to prepare. Hopefully she's healthy as well. She was nursing an injury. That's why she didn't fight Rose. Now, Macy's had a lot of success being an aggressive striker and taking her opponents down and wearing on them. She's just very offensive. But Alexa has really good takedown defense. Again, she's had to do 3 full training camps for the Guo and Valentina. The most interesting part in this fight for me is how does it start? Does Alexa walk at Barber and box her up she's going to have big swing and misses? Or does Macy get a takedown and control this fight early? Because that could really change the course of the fight. I think Barber does get enough takedowns to make this fight interesting. But I do think Alexa's striking is just too good. I think she's going to be able to overcome this, and people are going to be like, oh yeah, Alexa Grasso is that kind of gal. For that reason, I'm taking the underdog, the dogs coming to eat. I'm taking Alexa Grasso. We are putting her on that parlay. I'm pretty confident. We're marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Again, F you guys that are just always trashing the UFC. I know someone's got to say something. Simone Yanez, Navajo Sterling, Casey O'Neill, Gabriela Fernandez, Marcin Tybura, Chase Hooper, Lance Gibson Jr., Ignacio Bahamondes, Tofik Musayev, Terrence McKinney, Kyle Nelson. I mean, that's a great way to start a main card. Then you get 2 beasts, Mansour Abdul Malik, Yusri Belgori, Alexa Grasso, Macy Barber. And then one of the most fantastic showmen in the UFC history, headlining. We get Israel, the last stylebender Adesanya, 36 years old with a 24-5 record, and the number 4 next to his name. It's kind of weird to say. Taking on Joe Body Bags Pfeiffer, 29 years old with a 15-3 record, and the number 14 next to his name. Before I get talking about breaking down the fight, just watching Media Week, the interviews, the body languages are very different. Israel is very intense, talks about putting in the work, coming back after the long layoff. He has to win this fight. Joe, who's usually uber aggressive, a little too rated R sometimes, seems very... It's almost like Israel's such a big name and an idol, he's almost like starstruck and isn't himself. So I'm really feeling an Israel Adesanya victory here. Regardless, Izzy's been out for over a year after that TKO against Nasruddin Imavov, which is his 3rd loss in 3 years, on the heels of debatably his biggest knockout of his career against Alex Pereira at UFC 287. And Izzy fought great in that fight. He did get caught. I think his reflexes are a little bit slower, but I think it's going to be enough against a hard-hitting guy. It's just going to be too elusive for Joe. And I think Izzy has plenty of fight in him. He's kickboxed a lot. He has a lot of miles, but he's only 36 years old. I don't think he needs to retire today. And he's taken on Joe at 29, so technically kind of right before his prime. I think Joe's only going to get better. And Joe's getting a huge step up in competition. His best win on his resume is over Kelvin Gastelum, and he lost to a savvy veteran pretty badly to Jack Hermanson only a couple of years ago in 2024. Jack was able to stuff his takedowns, and he just put on a striking clinic. Again, I think Joe's better. He has a good gym that he's training at. But I expect a lot of power versus finesse in this fight, grit versus precision, and determination versus fighting IQ. Breaking this down, Israel has a kickboxing style. He trains out of City Kickboxing with the purple belt in BJJ. His fight versus Kelvin Gastelum at UFC 236 was inducted into the Hall of Fame. He's a former middleweight champion with 5 successful title defenses. He's the first 2-time UFC middleweight champion. He has the most knockdowns in a UFC title fight with 4, which was against Kelvin Gastelum. He has the second most title fight wins in middleweight history with 8, only behind Anderson Silva. He has the second most knockdowns in UFC title fights with 9. He's tied with Yoel Romero for third most post-fight bonuses in middleweight history with 8. He's tied with Anderson Silva for most knockdowns in middleweight history with 13. He has the second longest winning streak in middleweight history with 12, only behind Silva. He has the second longest average fight time in middleweight history with 17 minutes, 9 seconds, only behind Sean Strickland. He has the third most total fight time in middleweight history, 4 hours, 51 minutes, 30 seconds. He's the quickest fighter in history to achieve their first 8 UFC wins. It only took 755 days, which again, he was a very active champion. He was been there, done that, a lot like Alex Pereira has. I think that goes unnoticed. He was the 2018 Newcomer of the Year. He had the 2019 Fight of the Year against Gastelum. He was also the 2019 Fighter of the Year. He had 2023 Knockout of the Year against Alex Pereira 2 at UFC 287. I haven't thought about this, just came to my head. I think that's a top 3 finish all time with the arrows, the whole thing, the history, the rivalry. Fantastic. And Alex Pereira wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Izzy. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. He's only 1-3 since 2023. He's also a former Glory middleweight champion. 16 of his 24 wins are via knockout. 2 of his 5 losses are also via knockout. He has a 5-inch reach advantage and a 3.5-inch leg reach advantage. I think that's huge in this fight. He could stay at distance. Now, Joe is an Art of War alum and former champ, Ring of Combat alum and former champ, Cage Fury and Contender Series 2-time alum. He's on a 3-fight winning streak, 3-1 since 2024. 4 of his 7 UFC fights have been Performance of the Night. Be like Joe. He shows up. He shows out. 9 of his 15 wins are via knockout, 4 via submission. So 13 of his 15 wins via finish. Credit to Joe, since that Hermanson fight, he has definitely been more patient of late. And I think he knows he has to be more patient here because he knows how good of a counter-striker Izzy is and what he is capable of. But again, the whole body language this week, it just seems like Joe's off. I think Izzy actually gets flowing earlier and doesn't have to deal with Joe's takedown attempts. I think he dips into the grappling well early and often, but I think Izzy defends them well and doesn't. I don't think Joe's going to have a chance to keep Izzy down. But again, I think the precision, the fighting IQ, and the speed is going to be the difference. Unless Joe somehow is faster than him and Izzy's falling off a cliff, I think it's going to be one hell of a scene in Seattle to cap off this fantastic card. I wish I was there in person. But I am taking Israel Adesanya. We are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Cheers to this card. I can't wait to recap this one. I hope I'm not underwhelmed. Because next week we go back to the Meta Apex. But this is a solid fight night card. I like the main event, 2 training partners. It's headlined by 10th ranked Renato Moicano and Chris Duncan. But that's episode 139. I'm your host, Shane Gillette. See you next week.